The first time that I read Twilight, I was a mere 19 years old, and I loved it so much. And recently I had a hankering to reread it, but now I'm 27 and I was worried that if I went back and read it, I wouldn't like it as much. I feel like I was able to overlook more when I was younger reading. I feel like now I'm a little more critical. And I know that Twilight isn't necessarily the best book ever written, and so I was worried that if I went back and read it, that I wouldn't feel any of the fangirly feels and it would ruin that magic for me. It's not like I'd taken a full break from that world. I've reread all of the reiterations of Twilight. So I read Life and Death, which is Beanie, sit down. Life and Death, which is the gender bent Twilight, and then I've also read Midnight Sun, which is Twilight from Edward's perspective, which was finally released in 2020. Not to mention that Twilight is one of my, like, comfort movies, so I've watched that a million times. Like, I watched it a couple months ago. But I didn't want to just avoid a reread because I was worried it wouldn't be as good the second time around. So I decided to turn it into a bit of an experiment to see if my reactions have changed, because the first time I read this, I had already started this channel, so I have documented on the internet my reaction to reading Twilight for the first time. I recently rewatched it to see how younger Caitlin reacted to this, and to be honest, 27-year-old me isn't that much different, because I still love Twilight. But I do want to do a sort of updated review. So if you have not read Twilight somehow, or you haven't seen the movies in the last 19 years, it is your time to exit. If you're at this point in the video, you probably know all of the specific scenes, so I'm not gonna like recap all of the transitions or the overall storyline, so I think we're all familiar enough. Upon the reread, I feel like I had so much fun with Edward and Bella's conversations because so many of their conversations get cut from the movie, I guess for the sake of time, but overall, like, they usually have such great banter in this book and we see none of it in the movie, to the point that I sometimes forget it's in the book. But one of the conversations I thought was just so melodramatic. When Bella is talking about, well, obviously you regret saving me from a van killing me. I don't think I caught this the first time, but I was wondering if maybe Stephanie Meyer was trying to create some sort of enemies to lovers arc in this moment. They get so mad at each other in the first couple chapters, but I felt like it was reaching for a trope that wasn't there. Like, who on earth is going to regret saving someone's life? And now y'all are mad at each other, and for what? Like, I felt like we were stuck in that so long that I wanted to only hang out in the witty banter areas, because I loved seeing fun Edward again. We don't get him much in the movie, so when the guys are starting to ask Bella to the girls' choice dance, like all these guys are asking, Bella is getting the Wattpad main character treatment here, and then we see Edward just shaking with laughter when the third guy asks her out. And like we never get to see that side of him in the movie. And normally if I want to go back into the Twilight world, I go watch the movie, and I forgot how funny he is. Also, it'd been so long since I read this book that I forgot that Lauren existed. In the movie, they sort of wrap Jessica and Lauren up together into one character, and that's Anna Kendrick playing Jessica. But I noticed in the reread, like, I get Jessica. I feel like my first read through, I thought that Jessica was just like so rude and so annoying toward Bella. And now when I go back and reread it, like, this girl has been fighting in the trenches for years to get her love life to move forward in some way. And then Bella, who self-describes as being very plain, shows up to their high school and suddenly every single guy in their grade is in love with her. And Edward Cullen is talking to her, a guy who has basically shunned every other single girl in their grade. So like, I get it. I would be kind of mad too. And I'm not gonna lie, this read around, I was sort of getting the ick on occasion from Edward, and I know that he is supposed to be from like the 1900s, like early 1900s. And so he does have a different way of speaking, but sometimes he'll say stuff and I'll just be like, ew. I don't know why, but when she shows up to the cafeteria and he like calls her over, he's like, why don't you sit with me today? The way he said it, I don't know why. Like, maybe it was just in my brain, the way I heard the voice, but I was like, no, leave me alone. Of course, I still love the classic, what if I'm not a superhero? What if I'm the bad guy? Like, everyone loves that line. And I realized, like, for a lot of us, Edward was probably our first morally gray, like, book male character. Because I feel like a lot of the time we were ending up with friends to lovers tropes in YA, like early, like in the 2010s. I feel like that came up a lot, Whereas now, like, almost all the books, at least the ones that I read and the ones that are going viral a lot, are like enemies to lovers. And so for the enemy, you need like that morally gray feeling. And obviously, like, we find out Edward's a good guy, but he did have, you know, a shady past and he has murdered people. And so I feel like seeing through the lens of book talk and the books I've read and like understanding the tropes better, I was like, oh, he was like part of the blueprint. Also, are we just like not gonna discuss the fact that Bella was like psychic for 10 minutes? On page 131, Bella has a dream of Jacob and she looks away. When she looks back, he's been replaced by a red-brown wolf with black eyes. And like, obviously that's Jacob's wolf form once he does turn into a wolf. And like, why did we never come back to this? Like, Stephanie, you've given her a psychic dream of the future and we're just gonna ignore that for the rest of the book. I understand it's foreshadowing, but like, that shouldn't have happened unless she had some sort of supernatural power. I don't care if it's cheesy, I still love the dazzling thing. When she keeps telling Edward that he dazzles her and he'll look in her eyes and she'll just get kind of like, and it's obviously part of being a vampire, like that's one of their things that they can do. But I thought it was so cute, like he did it on purpose when he drops her off one night and he like tests it. And then when she's walking away, she's like, I could have sworn I heard him like laughing in the car. And like stuff like that is so fun. It's so cute. I just couldn't. And so like, yeah, the fangirly vibes were still there and I love that. She also lets him know that it does work on other people. Obviously, like most of the time people don't say anything about it. But she says that, you know, you did the same thing to the waitress in Port Angeles after he saved her, which by the way, that scene of her getting stalked, even more anxiety inducing the second time. But then he recounts like how he found her through the minds of other people. And he said it was hard for him to leave them alive. Now, reading the book, we're obviously going into it with the understanding that Edward is a vampire. We know this in advance. But Bella doesn't know that yet. Girl, if he is telling you that he has the impulse to kill people and you don't know that he's a vampire, it's time to make a swift exit, stage left. Like, Bella was so chill with so many things that are not okay in this book. And I love that the next day Edward tells her that Jessica is going to be asking her about their dinner and about how she feels about Edward, and that he's going to be listening in. Stuff like this, the way it happened in the book was funny, and we either didn't get these little things or like they weren't as funny in the movie. Like him poking fun at her all the time. It doesn't happen because he's so serious in the movie. Like after Jim, when he has been in Mike Newton's mind, so he saw Bella accidentally like hit herself in the face with a badminton racket, and it's so funny because he like asks her how her face is and she's just so embarrassed that he can see all these things. Obviously he finds it endearing, but it's funny and I forget how funny the book is. Page 264. As if you could outrun me, obviously pulls the branch, blah blah blah. The meadow scene absolutely sent me. I feel like when I first read the book, I thought this was kind of like romantic. But if you were just to watch the scene as it's written, they spend so much time like tracing each other's face and like touching each other's faces. Like, I could not take it seriously, and also like absolutely not. If you do that, I'm gonna break out. Once again, the admission to watching her sleep, I'm glad that even younger me could just immediately figure out that this was creepy. Whether you're a vampire or not, breaking into someone's house and watching them sleep is not cool. Edward, you are 104 years old. Act like it. I think it's hilarious that the entire fandom just makes fun of Bella's outfits, and for a good reason. I forgot how bad it was until I reread this. I think I must just have blocked it out from my memory. On their first date, she says that she's wearing her only skirt that she owns, and it is a full-length khaki skirt. I'm picturing the skirt version of like, what are those called? Cargo pants. And a blouse, like a dress blouse. And then Edward tells her that she looks so tempting. I just couldn't deal with that. I think I just mentally replaced all of her outfit choices. Of course, the infamous phone call with James using her mother's voice off of the VCR, because that's how old this book is. Nowadays, with all this AI stuff going on, you know to like hang up and call back if you hear someone like in a kidnap situation, because they can now, you know, reroute through people's phone numbers and stuff and make it look like somebody is taken when they're not. It's a whole like money scam, but obviously this was 20 years ago, so it's understandable that Bella thought this was real, even though she could have hung up the phone and called her mom's cell phone just to see, but no. What I didn't understand was why Bella didn't put the phone on speakerphone. Jasper and Alice are right there, which first of all, they should have been able to hear this anyway, but I digress. She should have put the phone on speaker. Carlisle, Edward, and Emmett were on their way. They were on a plane. They would have been able to easily get Bella's mom and destroy James. And even if Victoria was there, it was still going to be 5 against 2. But no, all common sense had left the building. At the end of this book, Edward is in the hospital room with Bella, and she says something that makes him realize that Alice has told Bella how to become a vampire, like how humans become vampires in the process. And he's like so pissed, like, why are you mad? When I read this the first time, I was like, oh, I can see why he's upset that he didn't want her to know how it worked. But like, with as much research as Bella did about vampires, we couldn't put 2 and 2 together. Like, obviously, getting bitten, but not having all of your blood drained, that's how it works. Fast forward to prom, and I know that a lot of people make fun of Bella's outfit to prom in the movie. But in the book, it's worse. Like, she's up. Okay, so she's wearing a designer gown that Alice has given her, which, you know, understandably over the top, but she's wearing a stiletto on one foot and a boot around her broken ankle for the other leg. And I just, what are we doing here? She's already so clumsy, and then we put her in this. Make it make sense. And also, I forgot about Tyler showing up to her house because he had told everyone that he asked her to prom like months ago, and without any type of confirmation, he shows up to her house on the day of prom expecting it to go great. Like, what? And then Charlie calls Edward to let him know this, and Edward starts laughing because it's laughable. I was like, what is this kid doing? At this point, we're at the scene for prom, and in my brain, I am already mentally playing the music at the end of the Twilight. The same way that my brain just filled in Supermassive Black Hole during the baseball scene. It was nice to have a mental soundtrack going into this reread. But they're having a conversation, and Edward was like, Bella, I dressed you up and like obviously in prom clothes, and you didn't think we were going to prom, so what did you think was going to happen? And she tells him that she was like basically expecting him to turn her into a vampire because you need to get dressed up to turn into a vampire? Like, why would they dress you up, Bella? Explain the thought process. This isn't a ceremony. Of course, we end up with her not getting bitten, and that's where we end book 1. Now, I had a great time with this reread. I'm so glad I went back and reread it, and that I didn't let the fact that, you know, I wasn't probably gonna fangirl quite as hard, like, put me off from it. The next books aren't, you know, at the very top of my TBR at the moment, but I do want to circle back to them eventually. I feel like of the books, I am the most familiar with Twilight, so I think it'll be fun to reread the other ones because I've honestly probably forgotten a lot of the details that are in those books. Have you reread Twilight or any of your other favorite books years later? Did it change your opinion when you were older, going back and reading those? Let me know in the comments. I would love to talk about nostalgic books. And if you have any suggestions of what book I should reread next, like what nostalgic YA book I should reread, I would love to know your thoughts. Please like this video if you liked it, click subscribe if you want to talk about more book stuff. My name's Caitlin, thanks for watching. Bye!